It is 18,000 years ago. The last glacial maximum is fading, and the vast ice sheets that once smothered the British Isles, mountains of frozen silence a mile thick, are beginning to retreat. For millennia, this land was a realm of crushing cold, howling winds, and endless inhospitable tundra. But as Earth's axis tilts and the sun's warmth slowly creeps back across the northern hemisphere, a transformation begins. Glaciers collapse, valleys awaken, a frontier opens. Into this reborn landscape would step the first peoples of a new age. For hundreds of thousands of years, earlier human groups, Neanderthals, early modern humans, and others, had ventured into Britain during warmer spells, only to be driven out again by the inevitable return of the ice. By the end of the last glacial maximum, Britain stood empty once more, a blank page waiting for its next chapter. For decades, archaeologists believed this chapter was simple: a single wave of hunter-gatherers entering Britain after the ice retreated, slowly adapting and evolving their culture. But that story was wrong, too clean, too linear.
Today, thanks to the oldest human DNA ever recovered from the British Isles, scientists have rewritten everything we thought we knew about the first people to reclaim this land after the ice. To understand their world, we must imagine an Earth bound under a colossal frozen shroud. Between 26,000 and 19,000 years ago, temperatures collapsed. Europe was a frigid wilderness where tundra and windswept steppe ruled, and vast ice sheets swallowed Scandinavia and all of Britain. Only a few refuges in southern France, northern Spain, and parts of Italy sheltered small groups of hunter-gatherers, Aurignacians, Gravettians, surviving on the fringes of the frozen world. But by 18,000 years ago, the thaw began. Glaciers retreated in torrents, revealing new rivers, new plains, new possibilities. Into this transforming continent came the Magdalenian culture, the final great tradition of the Upper Paleolithic, flourishing from 17,000 to 12,000 years ago. These people were master hunters and craftsmen. They made elegant blades, antler harpoons, bone needles, engraved stones, and some of the most breathtaking cave art in Europe. As the ice withdrew around 16,000 years ago, a vast landscape emerged. Doggerland, a sweeping plain of forests, marshes, lakes, and rivers, connecting Britain to mainland Europe. It was no narrow land bridge. It was a living, breathing ecosystem, a natural highway for animals and people migrating north. Across this open world came Britain's first post-glacial settlers around 15,500 years ago, the Creswellian people, Britain's regional branch of the Magdalenian tradition. They carried flint blades and antler harpoons and hunted on the tundra that blanketed this newly exposed land. One of their most haunting sites lies in Somerset, England, Gough's Cave in Cheddar Gorge. Over more than 100 years of excavation, researchers uncovered tools, animal bones, and, most strikingly, human remains bearing unmistakable evidence of ritualistic cannibalism. At least 6 individuals, from a toddler to adults, were processed with deliberate cut marks, and some skulls were crafted into polished skull cups. This was not survival cannibalism. It was ceremonial, structured, intentional.
Another early site, Kendrick's Cave in Wales, told a different story. Here the dead were carefully buried, adorned with red ochre and personal ornaments. No signs of cannibalistic ritual, just reverence. For decades, these remains were little more than bones in caves, silent, enigmatic. Their identities were unknowable. Then came ancient DNA. Recovering genetic material from Paleolithic Britain was long considered impossible. Britain's acidic soils destroy bone quickly, and Ice Age DNA is often reduced to dust. But with new techniques, high-resolution radiocarbon dating, micro-drilling the petrous bone, ultra-sensitive sequencing, scientists finally succeeded, and the results were astonishing. A woman from Ghost Cave who lived about 14,700 years ago and whose bones show signs of ritual defleshing, belonged not to the later Western hunter-gatherer population long assumed to represent Britain's first settlers. Instead, she belonged to a far older lineage, the Goyet Q2 genetic group, named after Goyet Cave in Belgium. These were descendants of some of the earliest modern humans in Ice Age Europe, living between 35,000 and 15,000 years ago. Her maternal haplogroup, U8A, placed her firmly in this ancient Paleolithic population, once widespread, now exceedingly rare. But a second individual told a dramatically different story. A man from Kendrick's Cave, dated to around 13,500 years ago, belonged to the maternal lineage U5A2, one of the earliest branches of the population known as the Western hunter-gatherers, the Villabruna cluster. This group represented a new wave of people entering Europe from southeastern refuges like northern Italy and the Balkans as the climate warmed. Their genetic signature became dominant across Europe after the Ice Age. In essence, the Ghost Cave woman belonged to an ancient Ice Age lineage. The Kendrick's Cave man belonged to a newer population that swept into Europe as forests grew and ecosystems changed. The implications were staggering. Ancient DNA proved that Britain experienced a complete population replacement between 15,000 and 14,000 years ago. The earlier Magdalenian-related people vanished entirely. They left no living descendants in Britain. They were replaced, within just a few centuries, by the expanding Western hunter-gatherer groups, whose descendants would populate Britain throughout the Mesolithic.
As the world warmed during the Berling-Allerode Entrestadial, Britain shifted from open steppe to dense forest. The Goyet Q2 people, specialized tundra hunters, lost the landscape their survival depended on. Western hunter-gatherers, masters of forest environments, moved through Doggerland and replaced them completely. These discoveries overturned the long-held belief that Britain was recolonized once by a single evolving group. Instead, the earliest chapters of Britain's human history were written not by continuity, but by replacement. Two different Ice Age lineages, each shaped by their environments, each passing through a land undergoing dramatic transformation. The first post-glacial Britons were not the ancestors of those who followed. They were the last echoes of an ancient population whose final footprint on this island was brief, haunting, ritualistic, and ultimately erased by the rising forests and the people better adapted to them. And as technology advances, more secrets of these vanished worlds will undoubtedly emerge. Implications of this discovery. The genetic breakthroughs from Gough's Cave and Kendrick's Cave fundamentally transform our understanding of Britain's earliest human history. For decades, scholars assumed that Britain's first post-Ice Age inhabitants were a single, continuous population, slowly adapting as the climate warmed. Instead, ancient DNA reveals a far more dramatic and complex reality, a complete population replacement within just a few centuries. The Magdalenian-derived Goyet Q2 people, the first to enter post-glacial Britain, left no surviving descendants. Their culture, their lineage, and their way of life vanished entirely as the environment shifted from open tundra to dense forest. In their place came the Western hunter-gatherers, migrants from southern Europe whose genetics would dominate Britain for millennia. This discovery reshapes the story of human resilience and migration. It shows that climate change did not merely force people to adapt, it could erase entire lineages and open the door to new ones. It also highlights the fluidity of prehistoric Europe, where cultural horizons rose and fell like tides, and populations moved in response to rapid environmental change. Most importantly, these findings prove that Britain's deepest human roots are not singular, but layered, shaped by repeated waves of arrival, disappearance, and renewal. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this exploration, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, keep exploring.